ahead and start recording. And let me start sharing my content. Let's start this broadcast. Okay. All right, awesome. Okay. Hello, and welcome to my close reading analysis project. In this video, I am going to be doing this close reading analysis on the infamous poem by Emily Dickinson titled, "I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died." So let's go ahead and read the poem together, and then we'll be able to discuss the literary techniques used in it, and then be able to further discuss the symbolism and the themes that we see come out of this poem. So let's go ahead and read it together. The poem says, "I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. The eyes around had hung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. I willed my keepsakes, signed away, what portion of me be assignable, and then it was there interposed a fly, with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz between the light and me. And then the windows failed, and then I could not see to see." Ooh, okay, so what literary techniques did we notice when we were doing the first read on that? Now, in my opinion, I would say that these first two are not as important um, as the final one, unconventional capitalization, which will be the biggest focus, but they're still worthy of, taking note of. So the first one is the formal rhythm slash interruption, or I guess you could say lack of interruption in the poem, which is referred to as enjambment. Now, enjambment is a term that means that within a poem, um, a sentence is broken up between lines, but that is not meant to cause interruption. So we see here, for example, in the first stanza, the stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air. That is one sentence. However, Emily Dickinson starts a next line with "was" in the middle of the sentence. We also see multiple times where she uses dashes at the end of a line. The eyes around it hung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm. And then it was there interposed a fly with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz. So those could all be read as one sentence. However, she does a line break with a dash, but it's not meant to interrupt the way that you read it, the way that it sounds. The second one is alliteration. Does not seem too much here, but I guess it kind of pertains to, the formal rhythm, the artistic vision of the poem, right? We see stillness, stillness, storm. They all start with S, have that S sound. And then we also see down here, blue buzz between, all start with B, the B sound. I think that's sort of just an artistic choice. A lot of the times people associate rhyme with poem. So that just kind of has to do with the rhythm of the sound of it. And the third one, which is the biggest one that we're going to be focusing on, is unconventional capitalization. And I feel that this is what stands out to most people when they initially read this poem is they notice that, there are just common nouns in the middle of the sentence that are capitalized, and people are thinking that just seems like improper grammar, like someone doesn't know capitalization. But Emily Dickinson definitely does not do this. Um, it's at fault. It's like it's not meant to be an error. She, of course, knows her grammar. So then why does she do it, right? Well, the reason for Emily Dickinson's use of capitalization in the midst of her poem's means is to personify the common nouns. To personify means what? It means to give human characteristics to something. So why is she doing that? Why is she trying to give human characteristics to fly, stillness, air, room, heaves, eyes, keepsakes, breaths, windows? Why? Well, because the scene that is set here is Emily Dickinson lying on her deathbed, and she is trying to make death conceivable to the human mind, even though it's so great that it is unimaginable to the human mind, right? And when you capitalize something, you capitalize it usually because it's important. So she's doing this because she knows it's going to catch your attention, it's going to throw you off, but it has a purpose. It's meant to draw your attention to a specific idea. Those she, by no coincidence, did she happen to just, choose random words. No, she chose them on purpose because they, you know, perfectly represent the message. Like those certain words or phrases are the biggest, like, key things to understanding her message about death, which is that death is just rooted in mystery as well as the afterlife. Because even as someone who's dying, lying on her deathbed, in her last moments of life, she still doesn't know what death is supposed to feel like. She doesn't know what the afterlife is going to look like. Nothing is really going as planned, even though everything in the real world is as planned. Now, I know right now that probably just seems like I'm, saying things without anything to back it up. You're like, what is she talking about? So let's get into it. Let's finally, go stanza by stanza and review together the comments that I made about these lines that stood out to me, and I think um, give us a real idea as to what Emily Dickinson is trying to do here. So, sorry, my comments are out of order. I'm not sure why, but let's go to the comment that has to do with the first one. Perfect. So, right, the stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. What is stillness? To be still, right? To be motionless, not to move. Obviously, as someone who is dying, lying on her deathbed, she is not moving. That's the scene that she's setting, right? She's not moving at all, but oh, is her mind wandering? Her mind is wandering as she's, in this slow crossfade. There's a blurring line in her transition between being alive and being dead. What she's trying to tell us is between the heaves of storm, which she calls the afterlife, and the current, her life on earth, she's saying that it's not an immediate jump from one to another. No, she's in the midst of a storm, right? When you think of storm, you think of, it's scary, it's dark, it's villainous almost, right? A lot of the times when I thought of when I read that, I thought back to, all these like fictional series I've watched or read about, time traveling or like science fiction. And, when you're going from like one place to another, or you're being transported to a parallel universe or something, right? It's always like within a storm. And that's kind of what's happening here. I mean, the afterlife, it's another life, another place that our souls will go to, and that's where she's being transported. But it's not just a jump. No, it's she's going through a whirlwind. She's going through some chaos mentally, trying to figure it out, even though she's still. The air is still, everything around her is still. She is still, her body is still, but her mind definitely is not. All right, next stanza. It says, the eyes around had hung them dry and breaths were gathering firm. So this line is referring to the people that are gathered all around her. They're all cried out, right? Their eyes are dry now. Their breaths are firm. They're not hysterical. And this is all part of her, of her intention with imagery. She's trying to set the scene of what is almost like a picture perfect death or funeral almost of saying goodbye, right? She's on her deathbed. She's still there. People gathered around her waiting for what? For the king, for that last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. The king is referring to God, right? To finally take her soul. Everyone is just waiting. Excuse me. Um, I just sneezed. So yeah, so the people are waiting all around. It's like they're prepared, they're waiting, they already cried their eyes out. They're already gathering their breath. They're like, all right, we're ready for her to find. We've said our goodbyes and we're ready for her soul to finally be taken, for her to be on her last breath, take her last breath for her final heartbeat, right? So again, that just has to do with painting a picture. All right, I willed my keepsake, signed away what portion of me be assignable. This one is also quite straightforward. This is just, obviously we know her keepsakes refer to her possessions, her property, everything that is in her name, material things. What portion of her is assignable, right? Physical things that can be given away, who they're assigned to now, where they're gonna go. It also just is, again, it's about like ritual and tradition. Everything is just set up so proper and perfect for everything is set up perfectly for a proper passing. Sorry, got those words mixed up, but it's like in in this world before you die, we think as humans that we could prepare for death as much as possible, or we want to prepare for death as much as possible, right? We get our will settled, make sure that we know where all of our assets, everything that is assignable, everything about us that is assignable, will be in good hands. We'll go to the things that we want. We make all those decisions. We hope that, we can form friendships and relationships and have familial bonds so that, when we're lying on our deathbed, we know exactly who's gathered around us, whose eyes are going to be dry from crying and whose breaths are going to finally, become firm after, being hysterical and, grieving and mourning our loss, right? But ultimately, at the end of it, Emily Dickinson is trying to show that even as much as you may prepare and you could make all that effort in this world is only temporary. And there are things so much bigger than us that we could never prepare for and we will never be able to comprehend in our human mind, even laying on our deathbed, even in between this life and that hereafter. We still don't know. We are still uncertain. We still have spiritual doubt. All right. And then after what portion of be signable, it says, and then it was there interposed a fly with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz. The fly, right? That's the big thing that catches people. I mean, fly is capitalized and it's in the title of the poem, it's in the first line. And here it is again towards the end. Meaning what? Meaning that fly, when she notices that fly and its buzz, that's finally when she says, the windows failed, and then I could not see to see. Once that fly catches her attention, that's when she actually passes. So, what does this fly represent? It's paradoxical, it's controversial. The fly is both significant yet insignificant, and I think it's very much up to interpretation. But ultimately, we know that it represents, you know, some message of death or human nature, right? So the fly, since she capitalizes king referring to God, there are takes that say that the fly could be could be interpreted as like an angel or a servant of passing along death, almost like a grim reaper or an angel of death, because that's the last thing that she sees and she notices before, she sees the light and then she's gone. But another take is that the fly could just symbolize the aimless wandering of the human mind, as we've mentioned before, because a fly is like a distraction. It's something annoying. You can't really, ignore it because of its buzz and its presence, but you try to swat it away. Like it's just distracting. It's just annoying. It's irrelevant, right? Well, how irrelevant is a fly if flies could be scavengers just like us? And with that, I wanted to pose, a food for thought. As we know, the big themes here are death and humanity. And I remember when I first read this poem, I thought back to a novel that I read my sophomore year of high school called Lord of the Flies, which is a very well known novel by William Golding. And so I wanted to pose to you all, what is the symbolism of flies and death slash decay within Emily Dickinson's poem, and how is that paralleled to the Lord of the Flies novel by William Golding? Now, a short summary on Lord of the Flies is that it's about a group of boys who get stranded on an island after a plane crash, and they're basically forced to, go into survival mode. And they have to do anything just to survive, right? And so ultimately the message that the poem is trying, I mean, the poem, sorry, that the novel Lord of the Flies is making is about, human nature and how we are innate savages, we are inherently evil and violent, and that is what we resort to. That's instinct. That's what we do when we're trying to survive. So that is our, you know, true form, right? Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to open this comment thing again, but it's not letting me. Let's try it like this. Ah, oh gosh. I'm sorry. View comment. Okay, there we go. So sorry about that. So I made a comment here that flies are also scavengers. They feed on food and flesh. And that was a reference to the Lord of the Flies and the savagery of human nature. We maybe, Emily Dickinson heard a fly buzz when she died because that was the circle of life happening. Everything comes full circle, right? I made a comment here that, the human body will decay and decompose into nature. And what do flies feed on? They feed on things that are decaying and decomposing and trash. They swarm over, old food, dead people, dead carcasses, whatever it may be. And I know that's graphic, but it's the reality of it. I mean, referencing back to Lord of the Flies, there's a big thing like the Lord, like it's called Lord of the Flies because the Lord of the Flies is like this dead pig's head. There's a part in the novel where there's a dead pig's head and there's flies swarming around it almost to represent like the devil. Right. That also has to do with the afterlife, with hell, with you know, some sort of bigger power, whether it's good or bad. That doesn't have to do with humans. So everything is coming full circle. This fly is the last thing she sees over her body because it's like, oh, yep, you're gone. And now I'm going to come and decompose over. Going to become one with nature again, and you're gonna, become part of me. That's why the fly is buzzing around her. So, yes, the fly is passing along death, but if you want to interpret it as like so far as to like a grim reaper, an angel of death, totally up to you, I think. Um, but I just thought that was so interesting, and I think it can be really humbling to the human mind to know that, the things that we can like to know that we cannot comprehend something as death, no matter how much we want to prepare for it. we can't. It's unavoidable, yet it's unimaginable. It's just too large for us. Um, yeah, it's humbling, but it could be taken so many ways. It really allows us to look in the mirror and see what makes me human, right? This world is temporary. What do I value? How valuable is the human life? Um, it can change your perspective on what you value. If you focus too much on looks, well, your body is your physical body is gonna stay. It's just gonna decompose back into nature. Your soul is what's going to wander in your mind. Your soul will not be in this life forever. It will be in the hereafter. I think it's very fueling to the academic mind to sit and think about it. It's very philosophical, which is what really drew me to the poem. Um, and I feel that, I've been exposed to a lot of these ideas since I was in high school, taking English honors and um, IB English classes and taking those exams. I love to dig deep into poems like this, especially when I can reference it to things that I've read or, that relate to my own life. Um, so yeah, I don't want to blab on for too long. I hope I didn't stutter too much. I've tried to practice this speech so many times. Um, I hope you all enjoyed listening and reading along and analyzing this poem with me. Thank you so much for tuning in. That is all that I have for you today. So yeah, thank you so much.